Good morning. Good morning. So we start today a new Hasidic discourse. This Hasidic discourse is on Parashat Chayei, and it is was said in the year 5732. So this is what we're going to be learning this morning and for the following days. If you want to follow, you can actually get your own book or request at 786-325-2329 a copy of the paper, or you could just look it up online today. Everything is available. So good morning to this Hasidus podcast. Ita b'midrash. It says in the Midrash, Amar Rav Aha, Yafe sichatan shel avdei Batei avot, avdei avot, mitoratan shel banim. The Midrash teaches us that the sicha, we don't know exactly the word sicha, what it's referring to, but the story, you could say, or the talk and the speaking of the servants of the Avot, which means Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. In this case, the servant of Avraham, which is Eliezer, more than the Torah of the children, which means those who received Torah after at Sinai. Why? Why do we say this? שערי פרשתו של אליעזר שניים בשלוש דפים היא אמורה, והרבה גופי תורה לא ניתנו אלא ברמיזה. So the Midrash says, because if you look in the Torah, you look at all the mitzvot of the Torah, there's some laws, for example, the laws of Nedarim, the laws of making vows, or laws of Shabbat, which are just alluded to and from an allusion, or the law of, for example, Maim, the law of water during Nisuch HaMaim, during the holiday of Sukkot, right? It's one letter here, one letter there, another letter there, it makes Maim. And the Torah is a minimalist when it comes to words. Every word is precise. So we learn big laws from very small details or allusions, but here, when the Torah speaks about Eliezer being sent to get a wife for Yitzhak, he goes and what he does and what he takes and what he said, and again you repeat it again for 2 or 3 pages. Why? So from here, the Midrash concludes that the events that happened to Eliezer, what he said, and so on and so forth, is more important than the Torah, which is going to be given at Sinai later on, and the Torah that's going to be kept by the Jewish people. How is that possible? When Rivka came, she brought water, so he should wash his feet and wash the feet of the people with him. אמר רב אחא, יפה רחיצת רגלי עבדי בדי אבות מתורתם של בנים, שאפילו רחיצת רגליהם צריך לכתוב. והשרץ מגופי תורה, ואין חולו אלא מריבוי המקרא. So he says another thing. If you continue in the verses, we see here that it's more important the washing of the feet of the servants of our forefathers than it is the Torah of the children. Why? Because, for example, the reptiles, there are 7 types of reptiles which are impure and cause a certain level of impurity in case they're found dead, and so on and so forth. And the Torah just says it in a way which is hidden. But here, we're even mentioning that in great detail, as if it was so important. So, וידוע הדייק בזה בתורת חיים באור התורה בדרושים של אחרי זה, שצריך להבין מהו טעם הדבר שיפה שיחתן של עבדי אבות מתורתם של בנים. So, in the different ספרים, of the Tzemach Tzedek and the Mittler Rebbe, we find that they develop this subject and they ask, why is it like this? שהרי במדרש מביא רק הרי מזה שפרשת של אליעזר היא ב' וג' דפים, אבל עניין התורה הוא שכל דבר צריך להיות בהבנה ובהסברה, ואם כן מהו הטעם ומהו הטעם והבנה והסברה בזה שיפה שיחתן חולו מתורתן חולו. So he says, we see that the Torah has to be understood, right? Everything we do in the Torah has to be understood. So why is it that when it comes to this parasha, everything is understood, but when it comes to Torah, things are very minimal? גם צריך להבין מה שבנוגע לרחיצת רגלי עבדי אבות. הוכחה שיפה מתורתם של בנים היא רק מזה שנכתבה בפירוש, ואילו בנוגע ליפה שיחתן, ההוכחה הוא מזה שפרשתו של אליעזר היא ב' וג' דפים. So there are two proofs. One proof that it's more important, the sikha of the servants over the Torah of the children, is one because it's 2 or 3 pages. But when it comes to the washing of the feet, it says because it says it explicitly. Why this difference in explanation? So now let's go into the crux of the subject. ויובן בהקדים דיוק הלשון יפה שיחתן. Why does it say יפה שיחתן? The sikha, the speaking of the avot, is more important, more considered. דייקה. לכאורה אינו מובן, מדוע לא נאמר לשון דיבור או אמירה? Why doesn't it say the speech or the talking, שזהו הלשון המורגל בתורה שבכתב, as it says many times in Torah. וכפי שנזכר בפרשה גופה כמה פעמים, ויאמר וידבר, just like we see in the parasha itself, it says, and he spoke, and he said, and so on and so forth. אך העניין הוא, בדיוק הלשון שיחתן מתבאר הטעם שיפה חולו מתורתן של בנים, כפי שמצינו כמה פעמים. שעל ידי שינוי הלשון בתורה שבעל פה מתבאר הטעם בעניין שנאמר בתורה שבכתב ללא הסברה, דהנה אינו מובן איך אפשר לומר ששיחתן של עבדי אבות היא יפה מתורתן של בנים, הלא התורה למעלה אפילו ממצוות. So we know that our sages are going to give attention to a particular word that was used, a particular expression that was used versus another one. So here we have to understand, what do you mean the speech? We're talking about the speech of Eliezer. That would be more important than the Torah. We see that the Torah sometimes is more important than mitzvot. How is it the speech of a servant of Avraham more important than that? So what are we really referring to? כמו שכתוב, כל חפצים לא ישבו בה אפילו חפצי שמיים. It says concerning the Torah, it says that all objects, right, are not able to come to equality, to come to the level of Torah. And here we're saying there's something higher than that. Even spiritual things are not higher than Torah. In the only case that we see that something is more important than Torah, it's a mitzvah that cannot be done through somebody else, so you have to do it, and therefore the opportunity of that mitzvah is going to pass if you don't do it. And therefore, in that case, then we put the Torah aside, we do the mitzvah, and like for example, burying a dead, or marrying a kala, or whatever, putting on tefillin with somebody, and so on and so forth. ובפרט תורתן של בנים, שהיא למעלה מהתורה דאבות. Especially when you make the comparison, it seems to be one extreme to the other. We're talking about the servant of Abraham, right? His sikha, his speaking, versus the Torah of the children, which means after Matan Torah, the level of connection we have with Hashem is another level. It's higher than Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, whatever they're done, to the extent that it says that the service of Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov are like a good odor, because they're not substantial. When is it going to be substantial? At the moment that we receive the Torah, that moment it becomes substantial. ובזה גופה לא רק חוכמתם של בנים, שהרי התורה היא גם חוכמת ורצון של תורתן של דווקא, שהיא למעלה מעניין החוכמה. כמובן, כמאמר על חוכמה, יש בה גויים, חוכמה, יש בה גויים, תאמין. תורה יש בה גויים, אל תאמין. So, here we're not saying that the wisdom of the children is greater than the speaking of the servants. We're saying the Torah of the children is greater than the speaking of the speaking of the servants is higher than the Torah, not the wisdom. Because wisdom, we say yes. Goyim, nations of the world, they have wisdom. Torah, they don't have. But here we're saying that this is even higher than the Torah, which is higher than wisdom. And this is where we have to be very precise in the word and put the emphasis on the word sicha daika. Comme voit Badushim Anal, Mamar Azal Bezanedrin, à la pasuk Adam la Omal Yulad. As our sages teach us in the Talmud of Sanhedrin, that in page 99b, over there it says that man, on the pasuk, it says man is born to toil. Man is born to toil, right? To work hard. What type of toil are we talking about? Is it to toil in speaking, or is it to toil in Torah? What do you mean toil in speaking? Let's find out. Obviously, it's not talking about toiling in speaking nonsense. And not even to speak what's permissible. Right? Obviously, the Torah is going to not, the Talmud is not going to ask a question. What toil? Is it the toil of just speaking nonsense or speaking for the sake of speaking? We're talking about a speaking that's an obligation of the Torah that we are obligated to. Right? And what is that? Tefillah. Tefillah is called sicha. Tefillah le'ani ki ha'atov ve'lifnei Hashem yishpoch sicho. Right? The prayer of the poor, I think it's chapter 102 in Tehillim. Right? Tefillah le'ani. This is the prayer of the poor that wants to pour out his speech, which is prayer. Sicha here refers to prayer. So already we have a key, an element that's going to decipher and it's going to permit us to understand what are we talking about. שזהו עניין התפילה שנקרא גם בשם שיחה. כמו שכתוב ויצא יצחק לסוח בשדה. As it says about Yitzhak that when he went to the field, he went lasuach to speak. What speech are we talking about? He went to pray. He went to pray what prayer? Mincha. Since he established mincha. וזהו גם כן עניין יפה שיחתן של עבדי אבות מתורתן של בנים ששיחתן קאי על עניין התפילה שיש בזה מעלה על עניין התורה. So now we're going to go in the crux of the problem, the issue. We're going to see tefillah, prayer versus Torah. What exactly has more power? And here it seems that there's an advantage in prayer over the study of Torah. Bezat Hashem, we'll find that out. Tomorrow we'll continue.